Fractals of the Mists. Memories of traumas past and of those yet to come. Dark moments in not only Tyria's history, but those of worlds beyond. A realm where history and technology violently collide.
All right. I want to talk about fractals. I'm always giving advice to newer players, to people trying to learn gold, people not sure what to do at level 80. I'm always like, get into fractals. Fractals are great. And I want to talk about why. I want to kind of cover all those bases. Firstly, I want to talk a little bit about the masteries you can get for fractals. The first one you get, Follows Advice. This actually unlocks 2 of the recommended daily fractals. The flavor text only mentions the 21 to 49, the tier 2 recommended, but it does actually unlock the tier 3 recommended fractal as well. You can't really do these. You can do the fractals. You don't get these extra bonus daily chests until you have the Follows Advice mastery. The rest of these are both basically just like bonus rewards and potion stat conversions. The final one is the Mistlock Singularities. This one's really cool. If you're familiar with the Tempest Elite Shout Rebound, it kind of gives you a rebound in a sense. It also gives you a little +5 agony resistance, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But another neat little perk is if you have any of the infinite potions, the infinite Omni Potion or the mobility offensive or defensive potions, it will automatically apply them to you. I mentioned some stat conversions for the potions. The mobility potion gives you bonus concentration based on your agony resistance. The defensive potion gives you bonus toughness, and the offensive potion used to give you precision, but that kind of made agony resistance sort of like its own power creep. If you had enough agony resistance, you could use less precision and still be crit capped, and it's a whole thing. But anyway, that's a little beside the point. Let me show you kind of how my stats behave when we activate the Singularity and get the Mist Potions, the Mist Potion effects. So when we click the Interact, my toughness jumps up 300 points. My concentration jumps up 318 is how much 212 agony resistance gets you. So those conversions in your lower levels of your fractal mastery, that won't jump up quite as much as it did for me. But these middle 2 are not as interesting as the first and the final. And like I said, here's the rebound, the rigorous certainty. The next time you would be downed, instead heal, and there's a little +5 AR on it. Little +5 AR on it just for good measure, I suppose. Now, when you start fractals, you're only going to be able to get into tier 1s. This is the tier 1 level selection. There are little icons next to which ones are dailies, which ones are, there's the recommended one, like I mentioned, with the Follows Advice mastery. These are set. These are always the same. Level 1 is always volcanic. I do want to mention here with the most recent, the quick play function. If you go into your LFG, into the tier 1, there's a find a fractal quick play group. You can't do it from an instance. That's why it's grayed out for me. But this will basically just grab 4 other players that have clicked this button, or parties of players that have clicked this button, and throw you in, and it will pick one of 10 fractals. The list of those fractals you can find in the fractal incursion, or the incursive investigation achievement. It's in here somewhere. This one, stabilizing the core. This is the list of the 10 fractals it can choose from. For now, that may expand in the future. So if you're watching here from the future, how's it going? Hopefully this is useful still. And something else to note about quick play is I mentioned level 1 is always volcanic. So like level 2 is always uncategorized. Level 3 is always snowblind. When you queue into a quick play fractal, no matter which of those 10 fractals it chooses, you'll always be the scale 1 difficulty. This fractal difficulty scale, no matter which of the 10 it chooses, which it can be volcanic, but even if it's not, it will always be scale 1. So it's even, if you get the quick play kinfall, it'll be even easier than the traditional tier 1 quick kinfall, because it's only a level 1 kinfall. It's not a level 17 kinfall. Hopefully that's not too complicated, not too confusing. The TLDR of the quick play is it's even easier, other than the volcanic fractal, I suppose. Now, I'm going to show on screen really quick the difference between the tiers, monsters. Hey gamers, I want to interject here. I didn't touch on something as much as I wanted to. It's the future. I'm editing. The footage that I'm gonna show over here for the different monsters from different tiers of fractals. I wanted to point out that in this example, both the bats are level 80. You won't always see that. Higher tier fractals will often use a slightly higher level monsters, usually like 80, 82 is something I see quite a lot in tier 4 fractals. And obviously you can see the tier 4 bat is hitting a lot faster, is critting more frequently, is hitting harder. That's something I wanted to mention when I was recording earlier, and well, when you don't have a script, you sort of just ramble and you just wing it, and so I didn't mention as much as I wanted to. Okay, back to before. So as you go up in higher tier, you'll notice that there's a little icon when you mouse over it. This one says stick together. This is an instability. This means that for the entire duration of this particular volcanic, you are impacted by this stick together instability. And as it says, you take extra damage when not close to an ally, but you deal more damage if you are close to an ally. A lot of them try to have this kind of give and take where you can play into it a little bit. I think the system could be better personally, but that's a different video. The boon overload says outgoing boon duration is increased by 20%, but your max health is reduced by 1.5% per boon you have on you. So again, kind of a give and take. I'm going to go through all of them in a little bit. I'm not doing this scripted. I find that this is more authentic to the experience you would have if you were hanging out with me live. So I'm just going to wing it, and we're going to talk about everything I think is important, and we'll go from there. Now, in tier 1, it'll show you your personal agony resistance. If you're just starting, this is likely a low number. This might even be 0, and that's okay. Something that is kind of a little blurry, I guess, a little murky in the details of how fractals work is the agony resistance mechanic. Down here, there's the fractal title. There's also a suggested agony resistance entry here, and you might notice as we go further and further down the list, this number stays 0, and it will stay 0 all the way up until you get to level 20, where it starts saying you might want to have some agony resistance. Now, you don't have to, it will not disallow you from joining fractals if you don't have this agony resistance. That's why it says it's suggested. If you don't have the agony resistance, all that means is if you get hit with agony, it's going to hurt. If you meet this minimum level, it will do about 1% of your health. I'll try to remember to leave a link to the agony and agony resistance wiki pages. It's a bit of a strange table. But I'll get into more of that later as well. So you don't need any agony at all until you get to level 20. Now, suppose you do want, you don't have any agony resistance, but maybe you want to try your hand at some of these higher level fractals. Maybe you want to get into level 22, and you might want to see, like, maybe, I don't have any agony resistance. I want to get in there and do it. How bad will the agony hurt? Okay, so check this out. When you activate any of the fractals above level 20, you'll notice over here on this little rock peninsula, the Chronicle Mistwalker spawns in and sits down. And now you can see here's a little pool, a little AoE of agony that you can step into, and this is the level 22 agony. And you can step in and you can see how much it hurts. Okay, I've got tons and tons of AR. That doesn't hurt very much. That's not that big a deal. I can take this fractal. Now, I'm going to switch to a character that I don't do fractals on very much. Okay, I'm here on my my druid, my monk. This is mostly my fisherman at this point. I don't really use him for anything. So he only has 45 AR. This is because of account-wide fractal augments that give you bonus agony resistance, and the max you can get account-wide is 45. So on a low level like 22, it only needs 11 AR. I also, on this character, just fine. The minimum fractal damage is like 1% or less than 1% or something like that. However, if I head back to the scale setting sequencer, now that I don't have above the maximum required fractal agony resistance, you'll see that as we go into the higher scales, some of these fractals will start turning yellow in number, orange, and even red as we get further up and further up. So this character only has 45 AR, So once the suggested AR is almost 30 points higher, this turns red. And so what does that mean? Well, I only have 45 AR. Let's say I want to beat Lonely Tower, and we're gonna, you know, maybe progress into tier 3s on this particular character. We'll step in and we'll see, again, suggested AR. Even up here in the HUD, you can see that it's turned orange. It's kind of like a little warning, like, hey, you get hit with Agony, it's gonna hurt. And now we can kind of see, look at how much damage this is chunking out of my health. And that was just 2 seconds of Agony. 2 seconds of Agony. And it took, what was that, 70% of my health, something like that, from 17k down to 7k. So yeah, like 65, 70% of my health. And it doesn't stop. It doesn't, you know, pull punches just because it's really giving you the business, so to speak. If we go into a fractal that requires even more, I'll even just go to the first red one, and we'll see how it stands. So suggested 74, again, up here in the UI, you can see that the text is turned red, like, hey, you don't have enough AR. Also, if you're in a party, you can see your fellow party members' AR level. That's the default, what it displays. If you're in a party or a squad in World v World, you'll see the blue number. That's their world rank. If you're out with them in the open world, you might see their level. You might see their mastery rank. In Fractals, you see their agony resistance. So other players might see that and go, hey, your agony's a little low. Are you in the wrong build? Are you in the wrong gear? Are you on the right character even? So let's see how bad this hurts if we step into this. Oh my lord, we're getting melted. And it will knock you down. And it won't stop ticking just because you get downed. If you are really, really out of your league when it comes to agony and agony resistance, it will fully kill you. It doesn't care. It will drop you. So that's what that mechanic is. Hey again, Future Masker here. One thing I didn't mention in my initial take is when you're starting your fractal journey, you won't have access to even look at these tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 listings. You similarly won't have access to the tier 2, the Adept, Expert, and Master Scale LFGs. Both of them open up simultaneously when you are within 5 levels of the next tier. So what that means is when your personal fractal level gets to level 20, or maybe it's 21, I think it's 21 actually, you'll be able to look into tier 2 and start the aquatic ruins. Similarly, when it gets to 40, I think 46, you'll be able to see tier 3 and you'll be able to unlock the expert scales LFG and so on and so forth. Something small that I didn't get back to, didn't get around to. The joys of an unscripted fractal guide video. Okay, back to the present. It's meant to sort of scale with you as you progress through fractals. You may have heard it said that fractals are the only content that truly require ascended gear, because only ascended gear has these infusion slots that you can place agony resistance into. Again, I don't play this character, so he doesn't have any agony resistance. The rule of thumb for agony is +9s are kind of the go-to, kind of the good balance between expensive and effective for their slot that they take up. You can, however, something that was taught to me years ago is because once you have the fractal masteries, it unlocks all of the vendors in here. So if you talk to the infusion vendor, you can use him to create, with some coin and some +1s, all of the odd numbered agony infusions. The reason for the coin and the reason that this is really helpful is because normally you would need an artificer, which wouldn't it be great if this character was an artificer? He's not. Okay, well, never mind that. This is convenient because normally you would need an artificer to combine 2 +1s to make a +2, and 2 +2s to make a +3, and 2 +3s to make a +4. And the reason there's gold cost associated with this is because it also requires those thermonuclear or thermo reagents, whatever they are, which is sort of just like a gold sink to let you upgrade your agony. Now that vendor, that infuse vendor I was just speaking with, he gives it to you at the exact same cost as these thermocatalytic reagents would be from any of the Master Craftsman vendors. It's the same cost, so this is really super handy for if you are starting your fractal journey, if you are, you know, leveling up your infusions to try to get to +9s, like I said, is kind of the de facto kind of go-to tier where I'm filling the infusion slot, but I'm also getting some good resistance out of it. Now, something that you can do if you don't have any of the account augments that I mentioned, if you don't have any of the account-wide agony resistance, a tip that was taught to me years ago was if you fill, since you have to switch weapons, you're going to need agony infusions in both of your weapon sets, right? If you put +9s in all your armor and +9s in all your trinkets, you only have to put +7s in your weapons, which means you don't have to get the more expensive +9s instead of 4 gold and a little over a stack per infusion. I can get away with for 1 gold and, you know, 64 infusions. So this is much cheaper. You can kind of squeeze out some extra value in that way, you know, if that is something that you need to worry about. Unfortunately, when you get into cosmetic infusions, they only come in +9 stat variants or whatever. So also, like, would you want a cosmetic infusion that's only active for 1 weapon? Maybe you would. I don't know. You play how you want. I don't care. But yeah, anyway, that kind of sums up, to make a long story short. That's Agony. You don't have to worry about it right away. That's kind of it. Now, moving on to why people do what are, you know, they sometimes refer to their tier. These are daily achievements, right? So you can do these dailies every day. Daily fractals, they'll say, you know, the LFG will say, you know, doing tier 1s, tier 2s, whatever. See, they're doing something else. You might see this, T4s. T4s implies I'm doing the tier 4 dailies. If you're in the other LFGs, you might see T3 dailies, tier 2 dailies. You won't see it as much in tier 1s because generally they're newer players that are not sort of privy to the idea of jumping in and doing whatever the 3 daily fractals are at tier 1. But that's what you'll see. And these are set up in such a way so that if you want all of these rewards, do you have to do the tier 1 volcanic and the tier 2 volcanic and the tier 3? No, because once you do the tier 4 volcanic, you get the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 rewards. Now, if you're just starting out, that might be appealing to you to aspire to, like, oh, I want to do my tier 4, so I want to get all those rewards. I encourage you still, even if that seems daunting, I truly encourage you get into fractals, even at just tier 1, because you can use this daily fractal achievement page, and you can look at what is up for grabs, even just from the tier 1, the initiates chests. You can see, you guaranteed get some nice things. There's a lot of things that are common to get, but you can get free ascended gear. It's not very common. It's, you know, it is rare. This is only tier 1 after all, but you can see it is possible to get coat boxes, legging boxes, helmet boxes, shoulder boxes, weapon boxes. Some of the fractal skins are pretty cool if you're into that sort of thing, if you're into that fashion. More common than armor and weapons are rings. You can get rings from fractals just for free, which starting out, you know, maybe you can't be a beggar and a chooser. Maybe you'll get a Malagan's Whorl. I could have picked an easier one to say. That, yeah, okay, it's got weird stats. This looks like it's... God, what is this? This is like rabid stats with a apothecary jewel or something. This is a very weird stat set, but it has an infusion slot and it's max level and it's as powerful as it's going to get, even if the stats are weird. So you might use it for a little while. You might be a power player and get very lucky and get a Ring of Red Death or a Crystalline Band, which are berserker stats. Those are very good. Those are very cool. Maybe you're playing a celestial support build and you might get Lunaria or Solaria and get these cool ascended celestial rings. Unfortunately, that is somewhat largely where the usefulness of dropped fractal ascended gear ends. A lot of these other stats are very weird or very niche. We get some Rampager, which might be good for a Condivert. Condiverts are primarily condition damage, but they want to be crit capped. It's a whole thing. But like I said, sometimes you can't be picky. Sometimes you get an ascended ring and you're like, wow, cool, sick, I have an ascended ring. As you progress further into the fractals, do they start at tier 2? No, it doesn't look like it. You'll notice that like there's some more loot in here in the uncommon. It's still rings. You might see that there are a lot more rings. That's because now in tier 2, they might drop pre-infused, which means they have another infusion slot. If you go through fractals and you get normal ascended rings that do not have an infusion, the bonus infused slot, Don't worry. You can infuse the ring yourself. In fact, one of the Masteries mentions vendors now sell ingredients for attuning rings. What that means is your ascended rings can be attuned and infused, giving rings a total of 3 infusion slots, which, like I said, if you got all +9s in there, that's 27 AR just from one ring if you've got them all full. You know what I mean? So, useful stuff. No rings ever drop pre-attuned, but it is pretty cool to get them dropped pre-infused. That saves you a little bit of resources there. Once you get into tier 3, I think this is where, yeah, once you get into tier 3, you'll notice there's more stuff on this rare drop table now. These are ascended accessories. So you can get free accessories as a drop from here if you're lucky. Again, the stats sort of vary. There's a couple of celestial ones with the Mersat token and the celestial sigil. Althea's Ashes and the Magister's Field Journal are the Berserker ones. It's all the same stats as before. Like here's a soldier accessory. Here's a rabbit accessory. You know, here's, like I said, here's a rampage. There's rampager stuff if you happen to be playing a build like Condivert. But again, maybe you're not able to be beggy and choosy. Maybe you just take what you get. And again, you know, there's added fractal, gold fractal skins. Again, cool if you're into that kind of thing. The ultra rare, endless fractal tonic is down here. And then finally, once you get into tier 4s, you know, that's where the blue celestial infusions become droppable. You might notice the rare table looks a little smaller. That's because some of the, from tier 4s, a 20 use salvage kit, which is about 20 gold in value, by the way, all of the accessories, all of the infused rings, all of the shoulder, boot, and glove boxes and gold fractal weapons become just uncommon. Tier 4 loot is really is quite good. And then the rare stuff is reserved for weapons. The fractal tonic, again, the coat, legging, and helmet boxes are all considered rarer than the shoulders, boots, and gloves for some reason. Now, you might say, rightfully, okay, cool, Hellmasker, there are all the rare drops I can get. What if I do my daily fractals and I don't get lucky? Why do I care? Why do I want to do fractals if it's just gambling? Let me explain. Every time you do a daily, you'll notice one of these guaranteed items is a fractal encryption key. Every time you complete a fractal, you earn... I'm on the wrong character. As I was saying, every time you complete a fractal, you gain fractal encryptions. And those keys that drop from all the dailies, and as well as these encryptions, they go together. Crazy, right? You can also get 30 deeply discounted fractal encryptions per day, which are, you know, 20 silver and a single fractal relic. You get 30 per day that you can buy, and I usually do buy all 30 of the deeply discounted. After that, you only get regularly discounted, and I'm going to go ahead and buy all 30 of these. I don't normally do this. Whether or not it's worth it depends on the market, depends on what's worth it to you, depends on... I've been doing a lot of quick play for the new event. I have a ton of leftover encryptions. Maybe it's worth it to me today. So the 20 silver and 1 relic is for deeply discounted. 25 silver and 1 relic is for just plain discounted. And so we buy those, and then it becomes just a fractal encryption key at full price, which is 30 silver and a relic. Generally speaking, most players agree this is not usually worth it. And you can get unlimited. You're not limited anymore by an amount. But like I said, I normally only grab those initial 30 encryption keys that are deeply discounted to get the most profit per key per encryption and so on. Anyway, so we have our keys, we have some encryptions. I'm gonna go ahead and consume these. It instantly unlocks, it cracks these fractal encryptions, and these, once they're cracked, you can preview and see where all, you know, what goes in here. I mention all of this because these encryptions and their free keys from dailies, the deeply discounted keys, this is where a lot of the gold gain from fractals comes from. You don't get lucky with Ascended. You don't get a lucky infusion drop. You don't get that fractal tonic, which I want to talk about again in a minute. What do you get from these cracked encryptions? Might not look like much. Maybe you get lucky on an Aetherized Sword skin, but you're not into the RNG. You don't want to gamble. Why am I doing fractals? Common items you get include all of these junk items. And I say junk in the sense of that's the class of item they are. You'll see these lower ones are worth 20 silver each. These ones are worth 25 silver each. These are worth 30 silver each. Or you might get a pair of these manuscripts per drop that are 60 silver each. And how does that stack up when we start opening things? Forgive my atrocious inventory. But I have junk items set to appear down here. So what if we open some of these? Here's a gold 20. Here, oh, they're 60 silver each, actually. It's not 30 each, it's 60 each. Sheesh. So there's a gold, here's 60 silver, here's 40 silver, and all I've done is open 4 encryptions. Not to mention, you'll notice these are lit up too. You get Imperial Fragments, you get tier 5 materials, you get more +1s, you get more relics, which is useful if you do want to pursue those account augments that I talked about earlier. I'm not going to touch on them heavily in this video. Basically, there's like account-wide agony resistance, there's bonus XP, there's bonus karma, and then the big one is the fractal attunement, which is the fractal, is it novice, prodigy, champion, god? If you hear about fractal god, that's what this buff is. You get bonus account agony resistance, but also outgoing damage and a little bit of health regen. It makes your fractals easier. And something that isn't talked about very much is with the fractal, you know, god and champion and prodigy and is it novice? I don't know what the level 1 title is. Each tier of that gives you a bonus encryption per completion. And that's kind of nice to sort of offset. They're very, very expensive. I'm not going to talk about them anymore. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and open all of these encryptions. Something that you can also get from them is you might get more keys. You'll see that keys are listed here a couple of times. So I bought 60 keys. There's a good chance I'm going to get a good handful of keys back out. Notice up here 6, 7, 8 more encryption keys. So we can open 8 more. Sometimes we'll get even another key from that little pile of keys. You'll see here we got some tier 5 fangs, claws, dragonite comes out of them. And now we've got our whole haul here. 6 gold of this manuscript, 2 gold 70, 80 silver, gold and a half, almost 2 gold. You get all this junk stuff. So when you're done with your fractals for the day, you can open up whatever vendor, never mind my gambling gizmo here. And look at all this gold. This all just to click sell junk. I go from 682 to over 7. We gained, what is that? 30, almost 30 gold. Almost 30 gold. That right there in raw coin, that's why you do fractals. That's why I say to everybody, do fractals. Get into fractals. For the time that they take, this is very, very, very good gold per hour. And when you get into the higher tier fractals, you might even indulge yourself in the challenge mode fractals. Each reward chest from challenge mode fractals sort of functions in a way like one roll on that table from the tier. I'm not sure if the tables are all the same, but I have on somewhat rare occasion, I'll finish a challenge mode fractal, and from the bouncy chest from the boss, I'll get like a weapon or armor box. Rare, very rare, but it's cool to see. So yeah, that largely covers everything I want to talk about. If I forgot anything, let me know in the comments. I also want to talk briefly about you hear of or are worried about toxicity in fractals. You may run into other players that are not very nice. They may feel that you're not doing or someone in your party is not doing a good enough job. And I'm not going to tell you you won't. It can happen. However, I think that in this day and age, with power creep being what it is, with resources like this one out there for people to learn how to do the fractals, it is kind of rare. I haven't had any really noteworthy toxic encounters in fractals in quite a while. Your mileage may vary, unfortunately. You know, it's not nearly as common as you may be afraid of or you may be led to believe. And furthermore, you really only start to encounter it when you get into those groups like I showed earlier, the CMs, T4s, or CM groups like this. You might get into this because challenge mode fractals on tier 4 are effectively 5-man raids. That's where the difficulty aims to be. It's a 5-man raid. Now, if you're working on the legendary fractal back piece ad infinitum, there are challenge motes for some lower tier fractals. Those are mostly just for achievement hunting. They only, I think they all just make it so that you have way less healing at the boss or something. Like, it's just a quick little achievement thing. Those are not meant to be raid difficulty, but the everything from 95 on has not only is it pretty difficult on tier 4, but it has a challenge mote right in the beginning of the fractal that that you can turn on. Yeah, 95 and up, all of these 6 fractals have challenge motes that make them even harder than if you just jump in and go do, you know, fractal 99 or fractal 100. That makes them, it adds mechanics, it makes things hit harder, it changes phasing, it does, you know, whatever it changes things. Now, I maybe briefly want to mention what some of the instabilities do when you do get into these higher tier fractals. I should have mentioned this probably a bit earlier, but in tier 1, you don't have any fractal instabilities. In tier 2, you gain 1. Each fractal has 1 mislock instability. In tier 3, there are 2, and as you may have guessed by now, tier 4 has 3 instabilities per fractal. These range from really annoying and you have to pay attention and do something about it to nearly not impactful at all. I think like this one is social awkwardness. Players will be pushed away from one another. So if when you're in a fractal with awkwardness, there's a little bubble, like almost a micro guardian sanctuary around you, and it kind of holds everybody away from each other. As soon as you have stability, that bubble vanishes. And in higher level fractals, you'll have stability for a lot of the fights. You know, there are dedicated healer rolls, boon rolls, that whole sort of thing. Some really rough ones. Stick together can be really punishing if you are caught out of position. There's one called Sugar Rush is punishing because it makes elites and lower attack 25% faster. It makes you move and attack faster as well. So again, that's where that trade-off is. What's the Outflanked is the one. There it is. Outflanked. I have long had a problem with Outflanked in particular. This is a dialed back nerfed version of Outflanked. Outflanked used to say, it says allies within a range of 300 take 100% damage when attacked from behind. It used to be 300. It used to be 300 damage, 300% damage. So you would take like quadruple damage, basically. It's plus 300%. So when something hits you from behind, you take way more damage. I've never liked these plus percent damage thing. It feels like artificial difficulty, but that's a whole thing. You can kind of read, I want to mention maybe briefly, no pain, no gain's not very fun if no one in your group has a boon strip. So if you find yourself in a no pain, no gain fractal, it may be worthwhile if you're on a class that can do it, a Mesmer, a Necro, a Spellbreaker even, of those of you of warrior orientation. If you can strip the boons, that's helpful. Some of these are very verbose in describing what it is that they do. You know, Sugar Rush and Outflanked and Stick Together. No Pain, No Gain just says the enemies gain boons. Enemies receive boons when hit. Those boons are, the reason I say that it's not fun, the boons are Protection, Resolution, and Might. So they take less power damage, less condi damage, and they hit harder. So again, Boon Rip is very useful there. Is there another one I want to mention? I don't know that there is. Frailty makes you small and take a little more damage, but move faster. A lot of them try to have trade-offs. There's one called Toxic Trail that every enemy has a poison field under them. And so, like, it makes it really annoying on boss fights that you want to stack underneath the boss and, you know, get all your hits in or whatever. And the trade-off is if you block an attack, it removes a condition, and it just feels kind of lame. It feels like, you know, even as a Guardian main myself, like, you don't really have that many blocks, you know what I mean? Some of these instabilities you won't see in the lower fractals as well. Like, I noticed I didn't see Last Laugh at all in tier 2. I didn't see Mist Convergence. Mist Convergence is another one that doesn't really explain what it does. It says the fractals of the mists are blurring together. What Mist Convergence does is occasionally you will have an enemy spawn in from a different fractal. What that means is, if you're familiar with the Twilight Oasis fractal, which I happen to be on, there are a lot of Awakened. This takes place in Alona. Palawajoko's around. There are Awakened around. So during a Mist Convergence fractal, you might get an Awakened Abomination just poured in, even though you're in Siren's Reef, where the Awakened never were, or maybe you're in Urban Battleground, where takes place in Ascalon. There's no Awakened there. It goes both ways, though. The trade-off of Mist Convergence is sometimes you get an ally. It's usually it's usually Ellen Keel that ports in. But if you're in a fractal where Ellen Keel already exists, then it's Bram. So if you are in the Captain My Trin boss and you have Mist Convergence, Ellen Keel's already there. You don't get another Ellen Keel, you get Bram. For better or for worse. That one's large. Like I said, Mist Convergence is one of those that is largely inconsequential. The Moss Man shows up. The Champion Rabbit from Uncategorized shows up. There, you can largely, sometimes a Jade Maw Tentacle shows up. You can largely ignore them. You can kill them if you want. You can ignore them. It doesn't matter. that I think wraps up the ones that I really wanted to talk about. There's one called Toxic Sickness that gives you, if you've ever played the Nightmare Fractal, occasionally the bosses will hit you with, you'll get like an orange cone in front of you and your character will puke. Toxic Sickness adds that to whatever fractal it happens to be on. Flux Bomb, you're periodically afflicted by the anomalies Flux Bombs. Flux Bombs apply to both allies and enemies. Enemies standing in the Flux Bombs are periodically afflicted with random conditions. Flux Bomb's really annoying because they used to be really big, like the Chaos Fractals anomaly. That's where they come from. That's where the inspiration is. They used to be that size, so you could really see, like, oh, I have a Flux Bomb. I should probably take that off the group. They shrunk them to be smaller, and the idea was to make them easier to deal with because they're not such a big AoE. However, the flip side of that is it's a much smaller telegraph orange AoE around you, so you're less likely to see it. You're more likely to not notice, oh shit, I dropped a Flux Bomb on the group, my bad. Again, the trade-off with that one is that they hit the enemies too. They hit the enemies, blind the enemies, give condies to the enemies as well as your team. Kind of a mid one, not terribly bad to deal with, not really fun to use against the enemy, like some of these are. Hamstrung is a really rough one. It makes your proportional to the percent health you have, that's your movement speed, up to 33%. So you get more and more stacks of hamstrung as you lose your health. On its own, you might think, oh, okay, big deal. I move a little slower. I don't care. Really, really sucks if you're also chilled, if you're also crippled, if you also have a mechanic like Sun Qua Peak's water phase that makes you wet and bogged down and move slower. Paired with hamstrung while you're taking damage, you effectively can't move. Not very fun. So something to be aware of. Not much you can do about it. There's a lot of unavoidable damage in fractals. So there's not, sometimes you just gotta heal and hope, But I think that really wraps it up. I kind of got more into the technical side of things and the really deep dive stuff here at the end. So forgive me for rambling, but as I often say when I'm live, I feel like my content's at its best when I'm rambling. So if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. If I forgot anything, if there's something you'd like me to expand on more, maybe I'll definitely answer comment questions, and maybe I'll even film a YouTube short or something to address things that I overlook or I miss. I think that's it, gamers. Catch me live on Twitch. That's all I got. Peace. Mwah.